International Karate is a game from 1986 and it's the first fighting game I ever played. At the first glance it looks like a regular one-on-one duel game, but for me it is a special one and I regard it as one of my favorite fighting games of all time. In fact, I return to it regularly and I have several reasons for that. First, I really like its gameplay dynamic, which is quite different from the established conventions. Unlike in the well-known arcade franchises like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, the object here is not to punch and kick the opponent until their health bar is completely drained. Instead, the player has to carefully approach the other combatant, taking punching distance in consideration while trying to predict his movements, only to land one hit. Of course, if the plan doesn't work out well, one can still panic and try to throw around random punches and pray one actually reaches a head, stomach or a leg. But usually, remaining calm and sticking to calculated moves is more advisable. After all, there is much at stake. Since there is no health bar involved, one hit is as good as the other. Well, this is not completely true. The old man in the background is not just a regular bystander. He is our master, sensei, whatever, and he's there to determine if a successful attack was worth either a half or a full point. Once our opponent made it to 2 full points, our game is over. Well, that is in one player mode though. In player versus player mode, one player has to win more rounds than the other in 60 seconds, and when one comes out victorious, they can continue the game alone against AI opponents. In this case, the player who lost is left to merely watch what the other is doing, and that is boring as hell. Who wants that? Luckily, the game can be restarted instantly in either modes, by pressing F1 for one player mode or pressing F3 for two player mode. Like in nearly all games, we have a difficulty ladder to climb when combating the AI. But unlike the model in this genre, our progress hinges not only how many opponents we defeated, but on the score we accumulated. Difficulty levels are represented by belt color from white to black, each unlocked at reaching a certain amount of score, and there are various ways to score points. Take the aforementioned half and full points. Each type of attack, when successful, has its worth in terms of score depending on how difficult and risky it is to perform. A leg swipe attack, for instance, will always score less than a flying kick, and that score is halved when the old man says so. I have to note, however, that although it is a cheap move, it can work in a moderate distance and is strategically a better choice when we need to avoid defeat. Our other, and possibly the more important source of score is time. Single player fights last for 30 seconds, and if we can defeat the AI before time runs out, the remaining seconds are added to our score. Now I think you can see how and why someone would consider playing with quick maneuvers to score time points, or go for a more time-consuming tactic with better hit scores. But of course the combination of the two is what makes progress faster. But that is not all, because aside of core gameplay there are also two minigames by which we can jump forward in ranking. One is about breaking a pile of tiles, another is about avoiding weapons thrown at us, both of which could yield an extra 2000 in score when done right. It is not only the belt color that changes during the game, and this is one of the parts I like the most, but also the background scene. One moment we're at the shores near the Sydney Opera House, the next we're looking at the Statue of Liberty, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Parthenon in Greece and other famous locations in the world, 8 of them in total. It might be that in modern gaming such travels around the world sound like a triviality, but for a kid like me back then, meeting these locations served as milestones in the game and motivated me to get better just to see more. It was only far later when I realized that letting the game play itself in demo mode long enough will show all the scenes without even touching a joystick, but then I still wanted to earn my tour. So the gameplay, the progression and traveling around the world, I love all that stuff. But there's one more thing I'd like to highlight about this game. I adore its controls. You see, one of the most severe limitations of the Commodore 64 is the one-button joystick we have to settle for. The lack of a second fire button is why a lot of games had to be ported to the C64 with the expectation that players will position their joysticks next to the keyboard because the space key had to serve that purpose. And although International Karate isn't free of keyboard control itself, despite that it could be, and I strongly prefer that, it utilizes what little we have to perfection, to be honest. That is all I'd say about it without getting into the details of how to perform every maneuver. I leave that to you to figure out. I have already tried it out with every conceivable types of controllers, like phone and tablet touchscreens, thumbsticks, D-pads and an arcade fight stick. It never disappoints and works wonderfully with the pace of the game. IK was released by System 3 in Europe, and the US release by Epix was titled World Karate Championship. Back in 1986, people must have liked this game as much as I do, because the next year they released a sequel called International Karate Plus by System 3 and Chop and Drop by Epix. Oh no, it was Activision this time. To me, this makes the impression that Activision wanted to obscure the fact that the sequel is related to the previous game. However, this might be because of some weird licensing stuff I wish to understand better, but I'm not so much a video game historian, but just a filthy little enthusiast. IK Plus is, as it can be expected, a more advanced version of IK in some aspects, like featuring 3 fighters instead of 2, who use a revised set of more realistic fighting maneuvers, but I'm not so enthusiastic about the new point system and more chaotic gameplay these result in. And there's only one background. It is animated nicely, but I miss the variety. Well, this video is not about IK Plus and neither about the several other versions of IK on other platforms like the Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, Game Boys, Amigas and whatnot, so this is where it ends. IK for the Commodore 64 is a wonderful game and I think everyone should try it out at least once.